All right, and we are back to digging deeper after a 2-week hiatus, I think. We're excited to be back. I'm excited to have these two. If you've been following us on Digging Deeper, you know their faces, you know their names. I have Tawny to my left. Tawny, how are you?
Good.
And I have Nat to my right. Nat, how are you?
Good. Doing good.
All right. Well, we are discussing our spiritual discipline for the month. And I'm actually just going to pass on doing this. It is simplicity and slowing. I'm just going to pass altogether because no, this is an exciting one. I love having these two on because they were kind of the pioneers behind this spiritual discipline. They put a lot of prayer and thought and advocating for these disciplines to be practiced by our church. Just very inspired by them. But it happens to be that this is one of your favorites, right?
Yep.
And why is that?
Well, do you want the long version or the short version?
Long version.
We are here to literally dig deeper into the topic, so I don't want anything summarized.
Well, I was thinking about it when we were getting ready for the podcast. Like, what got me going on this, like, loving this discipline? And it actually goes back to when my kids were little. And if you guys heard any of my Mother's Day spiels, you know that was super, super hard on me to have small, needy children. But I went through a spell where I was not even remotely close to the mom I wanted to be, as in I felt like I was verging on abusing my kids and I didn't know what to do. And so I felt like I needed to confess it. But at the time I was the women's ministry director at my church. And I felt like they would, relieve me of my duties because that's what I thought they should do. But I did. I went and talked to the pastor's wife and told her what was going on. And she actually, and this might be TMI, but she's like, Tawny, have you ever got your hormones checked? And I was like, no. And she's like, you should do that. And she said, and also you need to just, if you're having a really stressful week, just take everything off your schedule that week and just be with your kids. And it was so simple, but I started doing that. I did both those things. And yes, I needed hormone help. And I started like planning my life better, and it made such a difference. I also think that confessing that kind of broke that sin in me, and I was able to control myself after that, which was a different spiritual lesson. But I started being more intentional about living at a slower pace and simplifying my life so that I wasn't so stressed out, so that I could handle all the demands of small children. So that's how it started for me. And then I started experimenting with, different ways, and like not being impatient when I'm driving or not getting impatient when I'm standing in the grocery store. And life just felt so much better when I wasn't rushing and frantic and stressed out and angry. So it kind of started me down having a different kind of attitude. So it was really life-changing for me.
That's neat. Real quick for clarification, when you say you're about to abuse your kids, you mean like you're joking, right?
No, I was not joking. Like I was yelling way too much.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And then I actually ended up kicking my 4-year-old because he really made me mad. And then that's when I was like, okay, I need help.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
But after, when I went and talked to her, nothing like that ever happened again. Although I kept yelling and I was praying about it. And then I started coughing every time I yelled. And I still cannot yell without coughing. So I guess God took care of that too.
If she's ever an event coordinator and is yelling for people to do stuff.
No, I still going to start coughing.
Yeah.
That's
wow.
So, yeah, I think that's just it. I think it's, I think what the spiritual practices and disciplines do is, I think it was Richard Rohr who said, we want to get rid of the illusions of life and be present with reality. I think what the spiritual disciplines do is make us more and more present of what really life is about, why we're on earth, what we're doing here. And I think for me, I told, for the listeners, I told Tim and Tawny, I don't deserve to be on the podcast today because simplicity and slowing is not something I'm like credible to speak on, but I am currently trying to learn a lot about this. Okay. Sorry, this pillow. I am trying to learn a lot about these two practices, but I think it's the idea of just being so fully present and grounded and aware of what's going on right in front of you. And even more than that, being aware of what's going on inside of you. And I appreciate your vulnerability in sharing about your parenting, Tawny, because I don't know if this is how it was for you, but I guess it sounds like as you slowed down, you started becoming more and more aware of some of these destructive parenting habits. And I know that's the case for me too. When I slow down, I'm aware of temptations creeping into my life. I'm aware of stuff I've been pushing down that I don't want to think about or don't want to talk about or don't want to process. I'm aware of current realities in my life that, I need to focus on. I'm aware of the people in front of me and the beauty of them. I'm aware of life circumstances, and I think we can live life just reacting to things, or we could be proactive through life.
That's big. I think that's huge.
So I think that's been a huge win. So anyways, when you shared that, Tawny, that's kind of what I was thinking about. So.
Well, and for me, it was more because I kind of slowed down and got better at the same time. But for me, when I had all these like expectations and pressures and just everything too stressful and frantic, I just was reacting and wasn't able to control myself or even think about what I was doing. But then when I slowed down, I was able to be more in the moment and be able to control my internal being better so that I could control my external behavior.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because, and I joked earlier that I'm passing on this one just because I think I'm in a similar boat. It is just like, it's not something I have perfected, and I don't know if anyone's truly perfected it, but there's a lot of room to grow. But it's so simple, yet so tough. And you think about it, simple and slow, those are not two words. Like, if you're hiring somebody or if you're being asked to go on a team and they're like, I'm simple and slow, you're like, pass. I'm going to take somebody who's efficient. Right? And so it's very cultural to the society we live in. But I think what I've learned in those seasons where I do, like, if you have this idea of like, all right, simplicity and slowing down, you see so much in your life, both emotional, mental, but also literally like physical, that we do not need in our lives. I know for me, even just like stuff I have in my house, I'm just like, I don't use that. I don't use that. I don't use that. It's cluttered and it's here. So I did that and I was like, oh, this is dangerous. What does this look like in an emotional manner? I don't do that. I don't need that. I don't need that. And clearing stuff out. And it just like slowing down just allows you to see all the, I think that's exactly what you said, just all the unnecessary stuff, clear that out. And there's room for those very powerful, fruitful things from Jesus to grow in our lives. And it's, you find that those are the people you really want to be around. The ones that are just like very present.
Well, and I think if people have no idea what we're talking about, if you think about when you go camping, like all you have to do is sleep in and then get up, maybe take a hike, play some cards, make sure everybody eats. Like it's such a different pace and lifestyle that's kind of a little picture of what we mean to live in that kind of frame of mind.
Well, and this might sound really weird, but like some of the most, I think where I actually practiced this was the first week Clara was born. Essentially took everything off of our schedule and, had people come over, but I had nothing work related I was doing, no other social event. And I could just like internally, emotionally slow down. Now, obviously a newborn, there's a chaotic element to it, but I could literally just focus on that, focus on Rachel, focus on the friends that were there. And I remember feeling more emotionally than physically, that being a very restful time for my soul. No, obviously the 2 hours of sleep a night, whatever, that's not there, but it's just because I was able to be very intentional and focus on less. I was like, that's a very special memory, not because I was running around 1,000 miles an hour, but because there was a specific focus.
Well, and of course we can't always be camping and we can't always be the week after a newborn's.
Right. That would be wild.
But those are glimpses of the emotional simplicity that we can be trying to learn how to live with.
Yeah, let's real quick, why don't we kind of define both of these? So maybe a listener coming in, not knowing
good.
very much. So, Tawny, if you had to like define simplicity for people, and then I'll have you do slowing, and then why do those go together? Why did we put those together?
Well, I mean, I don't know like the technical definition. I know for me, simplicity, well, around my house, like I'm a minimalist, but it's just because I hate cleaning. So I get rid of everything I don't need or use because I don't want to have to clean it. So, but to me, simplicity is just choosing what things you want to focus on in your life so that you can do them well.
Yeah.
So you don't have 7,000 different things you're trying to accomplish. You just say, okay, these are the 5-10 things I really want to be doing in my life, and then just drop all the rest of it.
Actually do them, though, right?
Right. But if you don't drop some of the other stuff, you're not going to do those well because you're not going to have time. or energy.
That's good. Well, yeah, and I was reading Adele Calhoun. Her Spiritual Disciplines Handbook, and the definition she used was uncomplicating and untangling your life so that you can focus on what really matters. So whatever that means, uncomplicating your inner life, uncomplicating your spaces in your life, uncomplicating your routines, your schedule, this idea that quality over quantity, less is more. I think if you're anything like me, sometimes I don't know where to start with that when like I'm not about to start just cutting people out of my life, so I don't know what would you say to someone who's like, let's just talk routine relationships right now. We'll put the house decluttering over here for a second, but how would someone begin to start decluttering their routine if they love everything they're doing?
Well, that's a hard question if they love everything they're doing. I mean, because like we were talking before we started talking officially, I mean, well, share what you were saying, Nat, about being busy and
yeah. Well, so I am very single and
very
why are you laughing, Tim? Okay,
because you said very. Why did you say very?
So there's just a lot of okay, let's be serious. Okay, so I have a lot of like like Jesus, I have a lot of no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I have a lot of open time, and I don't have like the obligations of spouse and children, and which are good and godly responsibilities if you're in that season of life and should not be neglected. But for me, I don't have those sort of responsibilities. And so I think in my singleness, I'm able to have a breadth of relationships, maybe that married people with kids can't always sustain, and that's fine. It's just my season of life. I'm able to be involved in more things. I can probably be out later at night doing things. I'm not trying to coordinate schedules with a spouse, things like that. And it's just my season of life. And so I enjoy that in my singleness. And I think one of the reasons I've been single for so long is because I've really enjoyed that. And that's a pace of life that I like to sustain. But I also know that my health in ministry is lived out of a healthy single life of self-care. And so I think that I can't just say, oh, these spiritual disciplines are not for me because I'm in singlehood, because I think I could live a really unhealthy single life. And I think a lot of people live unhealthy single lives due to their lack of need to take care of this, and this, And so anyway, so I guess I would just say, I wonder where, what does it look like to be intentional and healthily filling up your plate with things of the Lord versus, but also having a healthy rhythm, I guess.
Well, I think one thing we can ask ourselves, well, put it this way. I did this mental exercise a couple years ago of thinking what really matters in my life. Like what things that I'm doing are life-giving for me. Not if they're right or wrong or good or bad, but like what things bring me life and what things drain me. And I like put a list on my phone. And so, and a lot of them were simple things like time outside, time alone, listening to music, like things that give me joy. And then the things that suck the life out of me. And I was just trying to intentionally have more things that bring me joy and less things that suck the life out of me. And some things I couldn't get rid of that were life sucking, but I figure if we balance out the life giving, we have more life giving that will keep us being filled up, and especially since a lot of those things tend to be, being with God and feeling his presence and being in the word and praying and, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm almost hearing this input output. Like we need to be doing things that are filling our tank because there are very actual, like there are things that we would be irresponsible if we neglected. And but those are going to drain that tank. And those are things that in our lives, whether it's in ministry or a personal life that we need to do. But what I'm kind of hearing is as long as we are prioritizing filling up that tank, the draining goes a lot more smooth, so to speak.
Yeah. And I think for God's people, the enemy tries to mess up our priorities. Like he doesn't tempt us to go rob a bank or, it's not these blatant obvious things. It's messing with our priorities so that we are doing way more life-draining things than life-giving things. Or saying that things that are actually necessities for us are not really necessities, they're luxuries. Like friendships, a lot of times we're tempted to think that we don't really have the time or energy to invest in our friendships, but then we notice that our joy is going way down. But just things like that. I think it's good to really pay attention to so that things aren't being stolen from us.
That's good, Tawny.
Yeah, so kind of what I'm hearing is this idea of really taking inventory of the things we're doing and almost, and I'm talking more on that emotional side, but almost like the goodwill pile, like, if I am committing to this, am I actually doing it? Am I actually using it? Do I actually want to? And taking inventory and being able to find those things that are draining life and we don't want to do them and we don't have to and getting rid of them. Now, am I correct in saying that all three of us could be practicing this discipline of simplicity and slowing? We could all be doing really well, but it would in fact look very, very different.
Oh, that's what we're
because our for me and where I'm at the different phase of life where family, kid, being out X amount of nights would probably be draining to me. But you're saying that's life giving right now. Very different, but neither of them wrong. And so I think that's important for our listeners to know. Where you start going wrong is when I'm like, okay, this is what I think is right for me to be simple and slow my life. Oh, but this doesn't look anything like Natalie's. What do I do? Like, well, Natalie's a different person. I'm a different person. On what you were saying, I wouldn't mind spending a few minutes talking about this idea of being busy. I think that is something that has really I know for me sometimes it's this weird passive insult of like, oh, you're too busy. And so I wouldn't mind talking about how this applies to the discipline. Like a question, is there a good busy and a bad busy? And what do you guys think about that?
No, I for sure think there is. I also want to say real quick, because I don't want to forget, I think sometimes we prioritize money too high over time. Like we value making money more than we value having time with our jobs and stuff if we're workaholics or whatever. And so that's just something to think about. But I think with the busy, are we busy about God's business? I mean, are we busy doing kingdom things? Are we busy investing in eternal things? Are we busy, watching show after show after show on Netflix? I mean, there's different ways, completely different ways to be busy.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm trying to think. I think there's a busyness that's more reactive to life and a busyness that's more proactive, I think. And I'm, trying to find the balance of that. I think we want to take ownership over what we're doing than just letting life toss us, if that makes sense. I think,
Are you saying like living the life God created us to live versus doing what everybody wants us to do, like other people's expectations?
I think that, yeah, because I think that there is always something going on. There's always something happening. There's always needs. There's always great things going on. Things that we probably sometimes even a lot of life-giving things that we want to do going on. I know for me, there's always a really new, awesome person that comes into my life that I want to get to know and spend time with. And, every yes is a no to something else though. And so I think, I don't know, I'm just kind of processing this question because I have a hard time knowing the difference between a bad busy and a good busy, I think. So
yeah, but I love that what you said, like the idea of being proactive versus reactive, that speaks to me like pretty strongly. I think so. I've been in ministry here at River Valley for like 10 years. I'd say probably for the first 7 or 8, I was a bad busy. I mean, the reactive. It's like, and I think what finally clicked is somebody put it to me this way, or I thought about it like, you could put over 40 different things on a sandwich. Like there are a lot of different ingredients you could put on a sandwich. They are not all meant to go on the same sandwich. And so very opportunistic. You said, a yes to something is a no to something else. Well, I was living in a yes, yes, yes. Finding out the no is actually your own personal and emotional health. You just don't realize that till it gives you the bill. But then like what I've realized is that, so I'd go home. I'm married at this point, and Rachel would be like, "How are you?" Well, super busy. And it became an excuse to the point where like mentally I was always busy, even if I wasn't doing anything. And that was wild. And so I realized that as you're taking a little bit more ownership and awareness, I found that I come home and say, yeah, my day was really full. My day wasn't busy because it was proactive. I think it was, I was able to say no to things. I was able to kind of construct the day in a very proactive, efficient, life-giving manner. And so I'm realizing there's a distinction between like a full schedule and a busy schedule. However, not forgetting the fact that like not all busy is bad. Like, and that's kind of what we've been speaking to. But
Well, and I don't know, was that book Margins a big deal around here like 10 years ago? It was in Medford a bit.
I wasn't reading books 10 years ago.
Well, anyway, the idea of this book was to just build, and it's one of our practices this month, just building margin into your day. So like there's a difference between, recognizing that just how God is our provider with money, he's our provider with time. Like he should be the Lord of everything, including our time. And so, but if we build margin into our day, into our schedule, so we don't have every minute planned out, but we have this empty time, then we can be asking God to fill our time and fill our days. So every day is not going to look exactly the same. And we can be in the moment each day, just living out what God wants us to do that day, instead of obligating ourselves to, 20 different things every day. We just are more intentional that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Well, I know for me, I've realized, I think I've taken steps to like not be as busy with activities in my life, but my mind is really busy. And what's been really hard is like, my mind's always racing and thinking about things. And I realized that I need margin to process the previous event that just took place, the previous conversation, my previous interactions. And I realized, if I go through a day with no margin, not processing I absorb every interaction I have, like every meeting, every deep discussion. It just sinks into me, and I have to unpack it and process. How did I feel about that? Did they say something I didn't like? Did I say something I didn't feel genuine about? I realize after church on Sundays when I come home, I'm like ready to cry because not that anything bad happened, but I just feel so emotionally like so much went on and I just have to think about it. Because sometimes I'll feel funky about something, but not sure which interaction I felt weird about. And so if I don't process that, I will throw up on whoever is my next, so I live with my sister and I'll come home, and if she wants to talk, I feel like if I haven't processed what happened maybe at church all morning when I was interacting with so many people, then I just will will spew or something
You
or
don't
emotion.
mean literally, right?
And right. Oh my gosh.
a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
I just will like, I'll just kind of, react. And so I've just realized all that to say that margin is really good for me so I can process each thing that happens in the day. And I think I'm feeling most anxious and stressed and just, obese inside if I haven't learned or if I haven't, processed a lot of that. And so, unbusying and uncluttering my mind is very important for me.
Yeah, and I've admired that as kind of, obviously you've walked very closely to Rachel and I in life, that seeing that more and more happen. And it's probably something that we don't do enough is unbusying our mind. I think we're very tangible people. So if you're listening, write that down and figure out what it means to you, because I think it's very, very valuable. Because if you need to process and you don't, then it's spewing out somewhere.
Well, and I think with our modern culture, with our phones and tablets and computers and TVs, there's a way to go through life without processing anything. You just distract yourself from one thing to the next, and then you're either realize you're super unhealthy and don't realize how you got there, or you just won't grow. You won't grow spiritually if you don't ever process things or feel the pain that you from somebody rejecting you or whatever. It's just, I think we have to be a lot more intentional about stilling ourselves and stilling our minds and checking in with our hearts and finding out what's going on inside and praying and asking the Lord to help us live well instead of just reacting.
Yeah. Oh, but feeling the pain is so hard, like we don't want to feel that. Like I can see why people go through life for 20 plus years not wanting to acknowledge the pain of their childhood or that because when you say like some of us can't even handle some of that, like I'm not being devil's advocate, but I'm just saying like I can see why people go through life busy, because who wants to acknowledge the 20 years you've been pushing down in your heart and not wanting to face, because if you stop then it attacks you, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. But the thing is, we have a God that is able and willing and ready to heal us. But we have to be willing to admit we need to be healed, and we got to go to him and ask him to do it.
Yeah.
And if we don't slow down enough to even know ourselves, we're not going to get to know God very well either. Yeah.
I am just remembering like something that always stuck with me was David and it was either 1st or 2nd Samuel, where he sins and then he sins again and then he sins again and again. And it's just a spiral. And it's almost like by the time he writes Psalm 51, he's stopped and processed all of it and felt the full weight of it. Then right in the middle of his sins, and I think that's what happens sometimes. We fall into a sin and then we don't really process it or confess it, and then we fall into another one, and then we're like 6 months maybe we're 6 months through this like sin pattern cycle, and then we start to really think about everything, and then it just kind of overwhelms us. And then anyways, I was just thinking about that, how it's easy to let it get out of control when we just are running from things.
No, that's a good example.
Yeah, I feel like my prayer would be that we are able to stop and identify that. But I feel like oftentimes we realize it's a thing because of some event, like that burst, like the pipe is bursted, something has happened, a broken relationship.
You kick your kid.
You kick your kid, something criminal. Like there seems to be some event where it's just like, whoa. And then you can hope that maybe it's caught there. But obviously we see these continual patterns.
I think there are times in life, moments of like crises that actually end up being a gift from God.
Oh, for sure.
Like seriously,
like he's waving like a flag.
Yeah, it's like one of the worst things that could happen to us is that a crisis doesn't happen and we keep going and going and going.
Right.
Or that you don't see it as one. And
Yeah.
Well, that's big. All right. I've loved that discussion, but I kind of want to, unless there's more to say, speaking of the stuff you guys talked about, kind of address 2 more things. I'm going to send one to Nat, one to Tawny. I think it's always important as we are doing these practices to see how they were practiced in Jesus's life. Nat, I'm going to send them to you. But then also leaving our listeners with some practical steps, some launch pads, maybe a teaser to the practices. Well, I guess if they have the bookmark, they see all of them. But just even with some practical steps where someone's like, this is great. I understand what you're saying. Nat, I had my crisis like last month. I am ready to like move forward. I want to give them just a few steps forward in that direction. But first, let's talk about Jesus. What does this look like in Jesus's life?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jesus lived such a simplicity because like he knew his identity, he knew who he was, he knew his mission, he knew what he was on earth to do. and I love like Jesus's baptism where, and Tawny, we've talked a lot about this, and something you shared that always stayed with me was like Jesus, like God the Father spoke Jesus' identity over him, and he was baptized by John the Baptist and then sent on his mission. It was like, and there's such a simplicity in it. It's like a king, you know, telling his knight who he is and then sending him off on his mission. And the king and the knight on his mission isn't going to get sidetracked by the, you know, when you've been sent out, you've been sent and you know what you're doing. And I think Jesus just felt his Father's favor and his pleasure and then was sent. He knew what he was on earth to do. And so I think he had a simplicity of mission. He knew who he was, and so he didn't have to accomplish to earn, you know, he just accomplished to you know, press into his Father's delight. And then, yeah, he just was so present in each moment and who he interacted with. And he was intentional, but he lived like he had margin where he could heal someone on the way to healing someone else and trust that person would still be healed even if they were already dead. Yeah. And like, you know, and so yeah, I guess he just had a simplicity of identity, simplicity of mission, and was fully present in the moment. And yeah, I just want to be the same, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, he could have got caught up in the politics of the time. He could have felt like he needed to heal every sick person. You know,
right.
there's so many things he could have done, but yeah, like you said, he just stayed focused on what the Father wanted him to do each day. And if it was to sidetrack over to Samaria to talk to some lady at the well, that's what he did. You know, he might not have even known the day before he was going to do that. He just felt led by the Spirit and he followed, you know.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he even says no a few times. It's weird because he says no, and then what it looks like an hour later, he's like, now it's a yes. Like he just had such a strong understanding of what you said, his mission. And yeah, it's wild to think that if we were able to get our lives to that pace, it's like, wow, what kind of activity would the Lord put before us that we would be doing? But thank you. I really appreciate that. Okay, practical.
I've been told I'm not a very concrete person. Well, so I always ask myself questions to like help myself with things like this. Like,
So step one, ask Tawny questions.
no, well, so like when I'm 80, 90 years old, looking back on my life, how would I want to spend it? Like, what things am I doing every day that are meaningless, add no value to my life? Those are the things I want to get rid of. And then the things that are helping me actually cooperate with God to become the person I think he wants me to be, I want more of those things. So it's kind of just reflecting on who, you know, you can ask yourself, who did God create me to be? What did he create me to do? And am I investing in those things, or am I letting myself get caught up and distracted by other things? So it would be real, like you were saying earlier, it'd be really, each person would look completely different because God created them for whatever he created them to do. But to just make sure that the ways we're spending our everyday time has value, that it has meaning, that like... I remember when I was watching a movie one time, and it was a really cool, super cool movie. I don't remember what it was, but I remember thinking, you know what? I want my life to be better than a movie. Like, I don't want like the best part of my life to be these cool movies I watched. I want my life to mean something, you know? And just, I don't want to sit around watching other people live fake lives. I want to live a real life that has value and meaning. So, just asking yourself things like that so that you are being more proactive instead of reactive.
You reference it, but it's a question that you challenged with me the past few weeks is what are you created to do? What are your giftings? And then making sure to the best of your ability that your life is lining up with that.
Yeah.
And not to say that there's always going to be maybe a season where you're not in that, but if you're going full steam ahead for something that you were not maybe gifted or built to do, it's gonna drain you, and it's gonna burn the candle on both ends, so to speak. So that's a really good question to ask. Something else that you talked to me about on Sunday, and this was very interesting, leaving time on the end of your events that you do, right? Kind of like, if you're meeting with Nat at 2 and you guys are going to meet for an hour, don't plan for something at 3, but maybe plan for something at 3:30 or 3:45. That way you leave that time for maybe Nat has a little bit more she needs to say to you, or you run into somebody on the way to the other one. So I thought that was really good, leaving time on the end of your kind of plans that you do.
And you can't always do that depending on what your job is and how your days are. But I do that sometimes. And if you pay attention, like sometimes I just kind of have a feeling like, I think this meeting is going to go long, and I will schedule in, all of our staff meetings.
Meetings with Nat. I think based on history, this is going to go long.
She puts 5 hours for her meeting with
probably.
Nat.
But we can't always do that. But when we can't, like appointments, I always do that. Like get there a little bit early. I usually have a book in my purse, so and not schedule something straight, or don't have a day where you have 3 stressful things that you got to do. You know what I mean? If you can help it, like 3 different appointments that are horrible. Just being more intentional. So
I like that a lot. That's definitely good.
And there's more resources on the web page, so you guys can check that if you.
Yeah. I think so a book I really liked that I was reading for school was called The Common Rule that you brought up, Tawny, and you had said this would be a good resource for this, and as I reflected on reading the book, you're so right. It's this guy, author Justin Earley. He has 8 common rules for life, and how 4 common rules for your day, 4 common rules for your week, and modeling your life after those 8 common rules. So, do I have enough time to share all 8? Okay, let's do it. Okay. So, aligning your day around 4 things. So, scripture before phone. Wow. I totally did memorize these. Okay, scripture before phone.
One rule of life.
Yeah.
Which that one alone is gonna.
That one's
Scripture before phone. Phone off for an hour sometime in the day. 3 times of kneeling prayer in the day, and then 1 meal with a friend in the day.
Or family.
Yes, friend or family. Yeah. So every day, making those 4 kind of your framework of your day is around those 4 events, I guess. So, and then for the week, curating your media to 4 hours in the week. So only 4 hours of movies, 4 hours of Netflix, whatever. And then fasting for 24 hours in the week.
It was 12 or 24.
Okay.
I can't remember.
Hopefully
I read
it was 12.
a couple years
No,
ago.
I think it was 24. Fasting, and then, so curating media to 4 hours, fasting, a full day Sabbath, of course. And then the final one was, I think, an hour with a friend,
each week.
Yeah, each week. Mm-hmm. So anyways, that's like the quintessential loving God, loving people framework, aligning. It's a rhythm of life, right? So it's this rule of life of like the rhythms that I form my day and my week around are going to be the rhythms of my life. Life is lived in the day in and day out. It's not so much about these big events that happen once every 10 years in our lives. Our lives are built on the daily rhythms that we establish. And so I would just recommend that book. So it's The Common Rule, Habits of Purpose in an Age of Distraction is what it's called. So.
Well, and I don't, he probably has this quote in the book. I don't remember, but it's Annie Dillard, and it says, how I spend my days is, of course, how I spend my life. And I love that because it's so true.
So true.
Yeah. And I want to say too, because I forgot, I don't want to make it sound like we should never have fun. Like we definitely absolutely should. And
Oh, yeah.
It's okay to watch TV and stuff.
Right.
It's just
Right.
how just
Yeah.
just paying attention to
There's
it.
a spot on the pecking order for all of those things,
Yeah.
right? It's got to be below some things. It's when you put it at number one. Where, no, that's a good word. Do you have a resource to leave us with?
Well, Nat just stole mine, but she remembered a lot more about it because she just read it. And then, of course, the Adele Calhoun's books with all the spiritual disciplines. That book's really fun. But that's on our webpage too. So.
Okay. So go to our webpage. More resources are there. Grab a bookmark at one of our campuses because there is a practice every week for us. And if you have any questions, you can always email me at diggingdeeper@rivervalleycc.org, and I will probably have them answer it and send it back to you. So, ladies, thank you very much. Any final thoughts that you might have?
I would just say enjoy this one because it's like one of the least painful. When you're coming off fasting, slowing simplicity is a lot more fun. So.
Right. All right. Enjoy. Yes. And then continue to practice it after this month.
Yep.
Anything, Nat?
Nope. Loved
right.
it. Thanks, guys.
Cool. Thank you, ladies. This won't be the last time. Listeners, thanks for joining us. We will catch you in a few weeks.